Hello and welcome to another training video. Today we're going to go over the second part of the contract to lease, which is the next phase when you already have your contract accepted by your client or by the landlord. This is the residential lease for single family home and duplex. To find that form on Form Simplicity, you're simply going to go to Add Blank Forms, type in residential, press enter, and you will find two different versions of the form. You have the residential lease for apartment unit or multifamily, or residential lease for single family home and duplex. These forms are pretty similar to each other. I'm going to go over the simpler one, which is residential lease for single family home and duplex, which goes over a few things that you must know when you fill out the contract and that your landlord or the tenant must know. The first thing you'll be greeted by when you go over this will be your non-lawyer disclosure form. I've already pre-filled out a few things here so I can speed run to explain to you what is on that form, what needs to be on the form. The non-lawyer disclosure is just stating that you're not a lawyer at all, that you're just filling out the form on behalf of the landlord, and that this form was prepared by the NAR or the FAR, depending on where you are. NAR is National Association of Realtors, and FAR being the Florida Association of Realtors. This is very much self-explanatory. It's just telling your client that you are not a lawyer, that all you're filling out, you just filling out that you're just filling out the contents of the contract so that it can be signed. Again, you're not a lawyer, you're just facilitating a service. Here, in the first part, you're going to go over parties. In this case, your landlord, Mr. Landlord, who lives in Main Street, Florida, your tenant information, and whoever else will be living on the property. Please make sure you fill out the landlord's email, phone number, tenant's email, and phone number as well. The address of the property. Right here, you'll be putting anything that is going to stay in a property before the tenant moves in and after they move out. So that means your AC units, your washer and dryer, fridge, or whatever else is pertinent to the property. So cameras, anything of the sorts that will stay on the property. Here, you're going to add whoever else will be living in the property. So it'll be the tenant and their children. Anyone that is over 18, just list them here for your sake. A lease in Florida, when you sign a lease, is only for 1 year, but truly it's 1 year minus 1 day. So you'll put in exactly when the lease starts and when it ends. In our case, it starts November 1st, 2022, and will end October 31st, 2023. The next section is rent payments and taxes and charges. The first line is how much total for the year would at least cost to your tenant. And the second part is when they'll be paying, either monthly or weekly or in full. If so, when. In this case, they'll be paying monthly on the first day of each month in the amount of $1,234. The payment summary kind of describes how and when they will be paid, to whom, and the method. So the first part is payments are, if the rent is paid in installment, the total payment per installment, including taxes, shall be in the amount of $1,234. Here is who they'll be paying to, in this case, Mr. Landlord or applicable LLC, because some properties are owned under LLCs, at 123 Main Street, the address of the LLC. If the tenancy starts on another day, this section here tells you how to prorate the lease. If rent is paid monthly, prorate on a 30-day monthly. So the cost per 30 days, you subtract that. So divide $1,234 by 30. That'll tell you the day-to-day cost of living in that property. Tenant shall make rent amounts directed to this section here. You'll tell your tenant how they will be paying for the rent. So they can either pay by cash, which I don't recommend personally, personal check, money order, cashier's check, or other direct deposit or Zelle. Anything that's traceable in case something happens is the preferred method of payment. Um, Cash, sometimes receipts get lost or receipts do not get made on time, but this is the best way to go about it. The next section here just tells you if they have a check that bounces, that the landlord will charge a fee, and from now on, future payments must be done by either direct deposit, money order, cashier's check, or cash. Section 5, money due project occupancy, tells you how much your tenant should pay on the day of move-in. So in this case, it'd be $3,702. And that section right here is actually filled out automatically for you based on the information that you put in here. So let's say if I were to change this to $50, as an example, you see here that the amount has changed. 1, 2, 3, 4. You always want to select what is the payment made for. So if one of the payment is for the first month on November 1st, the second payment will be for the last month, and the last payment will be for the secure deposit. If for any reason your tenant decides to pay an advance month, make sure you select that. If they pay an additional secure deposit, make sure you put that here. If there's an HOA deposit, make sure you put that there, the due date. And even if there's a pet deposit, make sure that this part right here is filled out thoroughly so that your tenant or your client can be fully protected when they give their money to the landlord or potentially to you, depending on the situation that you're in. Late fees, if most of the time you charge a late fee, here in the state of Florida, the late fee cannot be more than 4% of the total payment, of the monthly payment. So in this case, it'll be $49.36, and that'll be assessed after 5 days. Pet and smoking policies, unless this box is checked or pet deposit is paid, tenant may not keep pets or animals on the premises. And in additional, if they do allow them to have animals, make sure you specify the breed, the number of pets, the maximum weight of the pets in this section. Notices that tells you who the tenant should contact in case they need anything done. It'll be either the landlord or it could be you if you also act as a property manager. Utilities, this section tells you what each party is responsible for. Some landlords do give water, sewer, electricity, or basic cable. It depends on the situation. Make sure you fill that in thoroughly. This section here tells you exactly who is responsible for what on the premises. If there needs any repairs that needs to be made, I like to go further and add this section here, which is tenant is responsible for any repairs under $200. I mean that there is some responsibility on the tenant if something breaks and it costs less than $200. But if anything that is over $200, the tenant will pay the initial $200, and then the landlord will go ahead and subsidize the rest. Actually, in this case, it's actually best to put up to $200 and add landlord will come. No, that's it. You don't have to add the second part. Slash per repair. Here, the second part, you should put the landlord's information. They should notify the landlord at this address and at this phone number in case of anything that needs to be done or fixed. Additionally, this is very important unless it is stipulated in a previous contract to lease that this will be subsidized at some point or subleased at any point. Unless this box is checked, the property cannot be subleased. So that is a protection to the landlord and to the person that's moving in. You have to have written approval from the landlord saying that that property can be subleased and is okay to be subleased. This is a provision that has been put in place recently, even more looked into, due to the fact of the rise of Airbnbs, Verbos in the city. 11 and 12, number 12 goes over keys and locks, all the keys, the amount of keys that you receive for your apartment, the set of keys that you receive, mailbox keys, garage openers, everything that is included will be placed there. If there's any association keys or due fobs or entrance cards, this is the amount each firm will receive. and the location that it's for. Um, at the end of the lease term, the keys should be returned to, the landlord or whoever is in charge of the property at that address. If left blank, you always specify that it returns to the landlord. Section 13 is actually very important for you to make sure that you fill that out. If you rented a home that is older than 1978, there is a lead based paint disclosure that needs to be filled and shared with your tenant. That has to be acknowledged by the landlord, which is this right here. It also tells you how many, not tells you how many, but it tells you how to disclose it if the landlord knew about it, did not know, never received a report about the property, or has knowledge of the property, of the lead-based paint at the property. Next section, you have to have it signed by both the lessee, the agent yourself, you have to certify it, and this has to be certified for accuracy, so everyone that's party to transaction has to fill that out. So the lessor, the lessee, and the agent yourself. If the person is a service member, it guarantees them the right to terminate the lease as provided in section 83, meaning that if they ever have to be deployed for any reason, they are able to terminate their lease without any penalties. Sorry. Section 15 determines the landlord's rights to access to the property and for what reason. 16 is if there's a homeowners association, that the person has to be approved by the homeowners association and who must pay for it. So it could be the landlord, the tenant. Here you have to also say that you have to show due diligence either by the landlord or tenant to supply this information and pay for the security deposit. Both of these boxes have to be checked out. Use of the premises, unless this box is checked, this is what you want to know. The tenant may hang pictures and make themselves comfortable at home. This is what that means. Risk of loss insurance. This section just tells you that the tenant should carry insurance for the property for personal and liability coverage in case something happens. And pretty much the rest of this contract, besides this point, section 28, which has to be filled out by you and the other agent. So the licensee, the name of the brokerage, and commission amount, the split. The rest of this contract is pretty much giving you information that you need to know. The early termination fee, usually you check out the first one, just tells you that the landlord is entitled to keep in 2 months of rent if you terminate early, except if you are a service member. Basically says that the tenant agrees to pay 2 months rent to terminate early, or they can choose not to pay that and be subject to lawsuits or damages sought by the landlord. And after this, once you complete all of that, you've pretty much finished with the contract. And the next few pages are just the Florida Residential Landlord and Tenant Act. I do advise you to go over this with your clients. You don't have to read it word for word, just tell them what section is what is included. I do want you to go back and not learn this, but get familiar with it to a point that you understand what each section are, what are they saying, and how to pretty much act as a landlord and a tenant. It's pretty much a guideline to protect everyone. At the bottom of each pages of the contract, for the contract to be valid, it must be initialed by both the tenant and the landlord. So this section here, choice of remedies, you'd like to submit that as well, just because it goes back and reinstates what's on the other page, that the tenant agrees to pay 2 months rent in case of early termination, or that they chose to go ahead and fight this out in court if they have to. That covers the lease agreement in general. If you have any questions, make sure you contact one of the team members here to guide you through filling out your first contract. Or if you have any further questions, you know how to reach me, either via the WhatsApp group, via email, or phone number. Feel free to call me. But this has been your residential lease agreement and how to fill out the contract. Thank you so much.